Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I am doing a little bit of a tribute segment to actor Hal Williams, who recently passed away. Hal was born December 14th, 1934 in Columbus, Ohio, and he passed away just July 15th, 2026 at his home in Rancho Mirage, California. When I first heard word that Hal had passed away, my initial thought was, well, just recently, a couple of years ago, I had him as a guest here on my YouTube channel, and we had a long, lovely chat that broke up into 3 parts that I shared with all of you. And I thought, how can I possibly put into words better about his career and life than he did himself? But I had so many of you reach out and ask and anticipate that I would be doing this. So I thought, all right, this is an opportunity for me to say in my own words what Hal meant to me. I also immediately thought of David Harper, because David stayed in touch with Hal more frequently over the years than I think any of the rest of us had an opportunity to. So I reached out to him to see if he might sometime in the near future join me for a segment, much like he did when Lynn Hamilton passed away. So he said, I've been anticipating this call. So he is looking forward to having an opportunity to chat with me and share what Hal meant to him and the relationship that they had over the years and different things that they got together to do away from the set and away from the spotlight. So I'm looking forward to that. David recently moved, and he said he still hasn't finished unpacking. So this is a little bit of that spark to get his office gear unpacked so that he is set up and available to do a Zoom. So that will be coming as soon as he has it. I'm going to keep nudging him, because he said, oh, sometimes I just forget or whatever. So I said, well, I'm just going to keep bugging you like big sisters do to get that done so that we can do that segment for all of you and for ourselves to just talk about Hal and what a wonderful, amazing person he was. Never mind how incredibly talented he was as an actor, but just what a very special person he was in our lives. A little bit on just his life. He moved to Hollywood in 1968 and worked a regular job with the California Youth Authority to support his family while he was going out on auditions. So he had decided that he wanted to go to Hollywood and give it a chance. He had been doing theater, and he thought he would regret it if he didn't actually take the opportunity to see if he could make something happen. So he, as I said, he was originally from Columbus, Ohio, and he started out in community theater in Ohio in the 1960s while working for the Ohio Youth Commission. History of helping young people and doing what he could always to give back to the community. It says he is best known for his roles as Lester Jenkins on the series 227 and Sergeant L.C. Ross in the feature film and TV series Private Benjamin, and the role of Smitty the cop on the TV series Sanford and Son. And of course, to us, he is best remembered as Harley Foster on the Waltons. What's absolutely amazing to me is, as I looked at it, he was only in 7 episodes, but it felt like he was there far longer than that. He originally appeared in season 2 in the episode The Roots, and that was when he and his son came to Walton's Mountain and they were picking fruit, and as were all the Waltons, the Walton children, and that's where he originally met Verdi Grant. And so she set her eye on him because she was attracted to him and she was looking for a good man to have in her life. And she also felt that she could be a benefit to him because he had a young son and she could be a parent, a mother figure in his son's life as well. So Harley was all about moving on. He wasn't planning to stay in any one place and wasn't necessarily looking for a long-term relationship, but she flirted with him, and she was very outspoken about what she wanted and feeling that they could be a really good match, a really good pair. And ultimately, she convinced him, and they did get married. So that was the beginning of that whole family that was created there in season 2. Although Harley was talked about a lot over the seasons because of Verdi, but it was always like Harley was off working and Verdi was the one that we saw. He actually didn't appear again until season 5 in the episode The Best Christmas. And then he had several episodes in season 6. He was in the festival, of course, when their son wanted to play the trumpet in the festival. Jason invited him to come play, and then he was up against prejudice, and that the people in the festival didn't want this young black boy playing in their festival. And so Jason decided they were going to do their own festival right there in the community, and they did that in Godse's Hall, and that was where he did come and play the trumpet. And then we saw him in the family tree when Verdi wanted to go research the roots of her family. And Harley thought that it was just going to lead to heartbreak and that she shouldn't do it. But it just meant so much to Verdi that ultimately she did it. And they did butt heads, Verdi and Harley. Harley tended to be a bit more, don't rock the boat. Let's just stay in our place and not fight the system. And Verdi wanted to push those boundaries. She didn't feel like that should stop them as a people, as people of color, and that things wouldn't change unless the system was challenged. And so she often did that. Learning to read was a big step for her, and that opened her eyes, and it opened, I think, her thoughts and her dreams about what else was possible. So, and then we also in season 6 saw Harley in The Return when John Boy came back, when Richard Thomas returned in season 6, when they decided, and he helped push for them to reopen the mill so it would provide work for more people in the community. And Harley was one of the men that came to help and was involved in the cave-in in the mine. So that was actually, although it's considered one episode, it was a 2-part episode. So it's sort of like doing 2 episodes. So we're going to say that Hal did 8 episodes. And then finally in season 9, again, a 2-part episode, but part 1 and part 2 of the episode, The Outrage, when Harley, it's discovered that there's a warrant out for his arrest for having murdered someone. And John Walton gets involved in helping to get this wrong righted. And so he really becomes an advocate for Harley as they fight this situation. And ultimately, they are successful. And so Harley's name is cleared, and he doesn't have to keep running and hiding from the law. So that was a good outcome. And that was the last episode that Hal appeared in as Harley Foster in the Waltons. So at one point, he was part of 9 primetime hit TV series from Room 227, which was 115 episodes over 5 seasons. Then Private Benjamin, the series, he did 39 episodes. The miniseries Roots he was involved in. He did Sanford and Son, 20 episodes of that. He also did episodes of Kung Fu and various different other series. David, and he'll probably share this with you, that he reached out to Todd Bridges when he heard word of Hal's passing, and he knew that Hal had been an important part of Todd's life, and so he just reached out and they swapped messages as well. So many people impacted by the loss of Hal Williams, and I know our show and our cast, clearly not the only ones who adopted him as part of our family and loved him dearly as a person who was on our show, but also just as a friend. He was just such an incredible person, just warm-hearted, generous, funny, but also believed in helping and fighting for what was right. It's not surprising that he and Ralph Waite were good friends. Hal also was involved in the film that Ralph wrote and directed and produced, On the Nickel. And last time I mentioned On the Nickel, I said it was unfortunate that it wasn't available. And it actually, I've been told by a number of people that you can see it on YouTube. So if you would like to watch it, just search On the Nickel here on YouTube, and there is the film, the full-length film available, and you can see not only Hal in the movie, but also Ralph Waite. So check that out. Another piece of trivia, it said that he met Marla Gibbs on the set of The Jeffersons in 1975, and some 8 years later, she would later co-star on 227 in 1985 as his wife. Beyond the time on the set of The Waltons, I would also have the pleasure of seeing Hal and visiting with him over the years at various different Walton reunions. He was at the Walton's 40th, or actually it was the 40th of the Homecoming, and we had a screening of the Homecoming in New Jersey, and Hal was there that weekend. So great to see him there. And then I believe he was also at the Walton's 40th in 2012 in Los Angeles. I'm pretty sure he was there at that. I seem to remember that. I would also see him in Schuyler at the gatherings of the Waltons at the Walton Museum, and have a couple shots here. At one point he was there when there was a bench that was dedicated to Earl Hamner, right sort of on the property there of the museum, and you can see him in these pictures. So anytime that I had a chance to see him there was another, I don't know if it was the same weekend or another time in Schuyler, but I know he was there a few times. So always great to just be able to visit with him. And it was like family, just like the rest of the cast. When we would see him, I felt like he'd been a part of my life for so long, which he was. I mean, from season 2. So from the time I was 15, he was a part of my life. And so anytime I saw him, he was like a big teddy bear. He was 6'3", so a big man, but just gentle and kind, and I think he always made us all feel very important to you. He would tell me, "Oh, you're my favorite Walton," and yet I know he and David were super close. So he probably told each of us that we were his favorite, because it made me feel good when he said that. But I'm perfectly happy to share him with all of the members of our cast and also all the other shows that he worked on. I think he just had that presence that made people feel like they wanted to be in his presence and part of his family, his crew. We wanted to be there with him. So I always felt that way about Hal, and it was just such a joy anytime I saw him. And, to have that opportunity to do those 3 segments with him. So if you want to hear more about Hal's life and details of his work, through his own words, then I'll put those links here as well in the information about this video, so that you can look back on my time talking directly with Hal. The last time I actually spoke with Hal was, I called him on his birthday in December, and we chatted for a bit, and he sounded great. And I know he was recently out at some events. So clearly he was, although he'd had some health issues on and off, he was still out and about. So active and engaged in what he loved right up until the end. So, and David Harper said that he had spoken with him not that long ago either. So I'm glad that we were still connected as close to the end as we were. And it's interesting because I've been thinking about him a lot lately and thinking, oh, I should just reach out and give him a call. And I'm sorry I didn't now. So I guess that's the message. My takeaway from this is if I have people that are on my mind, I'm going to try and reach out just to let them know that I'm thinking of them and they're important to me and that I love them. Thank you for sharing this opportunity with me to pay tribute to Hal Williams. And I hope that it'll be soon that I'm able to connect with David and that we have a chance to talk more about Hal. So watch out for that segment coming up sometime, hopefully in the not too distant future. And meanwhile, please be well, and I will see you next time for more of my regular behind the scenes of the Waltons. And just help me in saying a final good night, Hal.